powerful new tool for 3ds Max 7 is the new Skinwrap modifier. What Skinwrap does is allow you to wrap a piece of geometry onto any deforming geometry in Max. So in this case, let's start off with an easy example of this. What I've got is the character Dimitri from created by Microids for Siberia 2, and he's just interacting with some reactor cloth. Now if I just back out here, pick on that cloth, you can see it's quite low res. Well, what I'm going to do now is go in and just unhide a higher res version of that cloth. So see, substantially higher res, it's got some bevels, some extrusions, other details on it. Stuff that I typically don't necessarily want to solve with a cloth sim just because it'll take longer. Now what I can do is take that information and use the Skinwrap modifier and tell it wrap onto the underlying cloth. You can see down here it actually is doing the calculation, tells me how long it's going to take. I only have to do this calculation once. Once it's done, I can hit play, and you can see the high res now perfectly conforms to the low res geometry. This allows me to do all my animation with the low res and then just turn on the high res objects that are wrapped to them for render time. Next, let's go through and just look at a little more complex example. What we're going to do is we're going to wrap a high res version of Dimitri onto the low res version that you see here in the viewport. So let's just hide this cloth. There we go. And what I'm going to do is pick the center of the biped that's driving Dimitri and just put it into figure mode. And we'll switch to the front viewport. And here you can see Dimitri is very low res, which is perfect as a game character or as an animation rig. But now I want to actually transfer all this motion onto a high res character for rendering. So to do that, I'm just going to go in here and pick the high res version of Dimitri's body. So there you can see it there, and if I zoom in you can see it's got quite a bit more detail to it. And now what I want to do is have it follow that motion. And this is the beauty of Skinwrap. Normally I'd have to have a whole separate rig for this skin, separate skinning controls, everything would have to be set up on there. In this case, I can simply go through and say Skinwrap, and then tell it to add the low-res geometry as the wrap object. You can see it calculate it down here. And now it's done. Now the thing I do want you to notice is the match between these two pieces of geometry is not exactly what you would call great. In the low-res version you can see it does a pretty much straight line across this area, and in the high-res version you can see a substantial dip. You can see the same type of thing down here. These are not, by any stretch of the imagination, perfectly matching meshes. This is actually what I would call a non-perfect example. But what I want you to see is the fact that Skinwrap can still deal with this. Typically what we have is fall off, distance influence, and face limit controls for Skinwrap. And what this allows me to do is control the distance out that the control vertices in the low-res mesh will look to control vertices on the high-res. So in this case, this is a global setting which will set all controls, but of course, in cases like this where things aren't perfect matches, I may want to go in and control the verts a little more specifically. So what I can do is simply go and say control vertices, and now I can pick on any vert here and see the range and fall off of that particular vert. And in this case, for instance, if I wanted to increase the overall area it can control, I simply increase the face limit, and it can reach out further into the model for control. We'll just set that back for now, because I happen to know that these settings are perfectly fine for the distance off that these vertices are. So we'll just turn that back off. And just to show you that this is all working, again, I'll just go in, grab the biped, take it out of figure mode, and at this point I can hit play, and you can actually see that the high-res geometry is following beautifully with the low-res. Now, to take this one step further, one of the things I might want to do is start to add on extra clothing bits, more pieces, because of course in a high-res mesh, more often than not, your character or object is not built out of one mesh. It's probably built out of multiple pieces. So in this case, again, I'll just take us out of figure mode, go over, pick on my high-res geometry, and I'm just going to hide everything else. So that's all we have. And what I'm going to do is go in and unhide, say, a scarf. So this is just one extra piece for the character. And in order to make that scarf deform along with everything else, all I have to do is take the current Skinwrap on his body and drag and drop it onto the scarf itself. So now the scarf has also got the Skinwrap. Now what's really powerful is, even though I've already Skinwrapped this and it's all assigned, I can still continue to make changes to the scarf itself. So if I want, I can go and pick on the scarf, go down to an edge level. We'll just turn off soft selection for now. And let's just pick, say, that edge there. And we'll ring select it, so I've now selected a ring of verts, and let's just do a connect. So what I've done is gone and cut this model with an extra series of verts, and of course I can go in now and turn on soft selection, and we'll just turn that down a little bit, and I can start to move it. So I've created a whole new set of verts and edges. I'm now moving them around, so let's say we leave them somewhere around there. Pop back out, and once I go back up to Skinwrap, it does a quick recalculation of the things that have changed, and it's reassigned itself to the model. So the beauty of this, of course, is I can be animating my low-res rig, doing all my work there, and someone else can be continuously making modifications and improvements to the high-res characters, and I can keep doing that straight up to the moment before I render, because all this stuff will just automatically keep updating thanks to Skinwrap. So the thing to remember about Skinwrap, of course, is that it can be used to wrap to any deforming geometry. So in this case, you happen to be seeing it on characters. This works just as easily on cloths. I could wrap to fluid simulations. Any deforming geometry can do the wrap. To take it one step further, of course, I'm just going to go in, put it back out of figure mode. If I wanted to get this data out as actual skin, which is a common problem, I may need it as skin if I'm going to a game engine, and game engines specifically understand the skin modifier and don't know what Skinwrap is. Or I may just want to go in and get more specific control with the skin tools over exactly how it's deforming. I can simply go down to the bottom and say convert to skin, and what it'll do is it'll take any Skinwrap object that's been wrapped to something that had skin on it, and will then convert that skin wrap to a skin as well. So then I'll get all my bones, my skeleton, my rig, everything that the original skin on the underlying object was using will now be assigned to this character.